Okay. Hello? Sweet. Okay. Hello, my name's John. Um, as you can see, I'm sitting in my recording closet here. You can't really see the full view here, but you can see I'm in this weird looking closet. I got a little bit of lighting. This is going to be a really weird video. Um, Forgive me, I've never really spoken to the camera before like this, so don't mind my weird habits of talking. Um, This is going to be a kind of weird video. My friends will probably be really confused and surprised because I had an idea for a video that I was going to make. Here, let me give you some context first. So, basically, I started this YouTube channel. The last video I posted was like 8 months ago. I made videos about, manga and I really like reading Japanese manga. I still do. That hasn't really changed. Um, but basically, I just graduated from college, and in my last semester of college, I just got really burnt out because I really enjoyed just making videos about manga and all this other stuff that I enjoy. Um, and I don't really know the future. Maybe I'll keep making those videos if I feel led to do that. But I just kind of got burnt out from doing that. I think it's good for people to express themselves oh my goodness, creatively, creatively. That's the right word. I think it's good for people to express themselves creatively, but I also think if you're burnt out, don't force yourself to do what you don't want to do. So I graduated from college. I spent the summer working with my parents, and then a few months ago I got a new job and I just moved to a new place and I'm working at a company and I'm doing auditing at this company. Um, but as I'm sitting in my new job, I'm thinking to myself, I'm kind of really ready to just start making videos again, start expressing myself creatively, and do all this cool stuff. And I had some ideas for how I was going to make these videos, and so I made a video about. Um, well, I came up with an idea about a video about like Disney Plus and like how bad Disney Plus is and how Disney Plus has just been going downhill lately. And I thought that was a really interesting idea, and I edited most of it, and I just kind of came around to a point where I was like, basically, the editing software I was using wasn't really working, and I just got really frustrated with this editing software not working, and I had all these other ideas I wanted to do, and I was like, every time I sat down to work on it, it would work for a period of time, and then after a while it would crash, and it would keep crashing, and I wouldn't be able to finish this video. Um, so needless to say, I kind of moved on from that for the time being, and I had all these other ideas I wanted to work on and stuff. Um, and I came up with this idea that I was gonna make this video, and I was gonna start making some shorts. And I literally just changed my mind. I'm not making shorts, basically. Well, maybe I will, but I think for right now I'm not going to, because basically I realized so. Um, this is where I'm going to pivot and start talking about my faith with Jesus. Um, because I was sitting down just a few minutes ago and reading my Bible, and I just felt like God was telling me to don't make a video about this manga. Um, I just felt like God was saying, like manga's cool and all, but there's something way more important that I need to share my story. I'm not saying, hey, God is telling me to be a YouTuber who makes Christian content. I just felt like God was just telling me in this moment, I need to share this for somebody, and I don't know who I want to share this with, um, but I need to tell this story basically. My friends are probably going to be really confused. I actually haven't really talked to very many people about this. I think I told one friend a little bit about this, um, not anything really super deep, but basically, when I was 7 years old, I was baptized, uh, and I just I was when I was baptized, I think I really genuinely had this faith and this belief in Jesus, um, and I really loved Jesus when I was young. And I never really have stopped believing that Jesus exists. I've always believed that Jesus exists, but somewhere along the way, I got caught up in all this other stuff, and I won't go too into detail. Um, what I will say is, whatever you think it is, it's probably not what you expect. Um, but I don't want to necessarily drop it exactly what I was struggling with. But let's just say I was struggling with sinful things, things that I should not have been struggling with. For a long time, I've been struggling with these things, and I haven't really told anybody. I've never told anyone. Um, and uh, a few weeks ago, it just kind of all culminated because while I never really stopped believing that God existed, over the last few months, especially as I just started moving, when I moved, I just felt this distance between me and God, and I was at this Wednesday night uh, event, this young adult Wednesday night event. I had been skipping a couple of Wednesday nights because I was just kind of tired, and I didn't want to go to church anymore. I was still going to Sunday morning church, but really that was only because that was my only source of meeting people. I don't think I was going to church, Sunday morning church, for the right reason. Especially when I moved, I wasn't. Um, I went to church just to, I think that first week when I moved like about 2 or 3 months ago. The first week when I moved, I went because I wanted to try and, find a new church, and I think maybe my heart was in the right place, but at the same time, I was just looking for community. I wasn't looking for God, and when I got there, and I was in this church, and people were talking to me, and it completely just devolved into I wasn't there at all for Jesus. I don't think. Um, I used to take notes when I was in church, um, and I didn't even want to bother taking notes because I just was zoned out when I was listening to the message. I was just there just to just to go through the motions. I think, and needless to say, about 3 weeks ago, I was at this Wednesday night gathering, and I the the speaker, my young adult pastor, he asked the question. He said, "If I were to ask you right now, if you think that you're going to heaven, if you die, um, I don't quite remember exactly what he said, but something along those lines. He said, what would you say if I asked you that question?" And he said, if your answer, this is what got me, is he didn't say, um, I don't know how to explain it, but something about the way that he posed the question just, um, I just, I hesitated. And when he said, if your answer is no, raise your hand. But of course, he had everybody with their eyes closed and heads bowed. And at this point, I think I had this idea in my head of I couldn't approach anybody, and tell anybody about anything that was going on in my life, because I didn't want people to think that I was struggling with Jesus at all. Um, and and I let it fester so much to the point that when he asked that question, "Do you think you're going to heaven?" It wasn't a question about whether or not I thought that Jesus was real. It was a question of, did I believe I was going to heaven? And for a second, I let my shame well inside of me, and I thought to myself, I don't know. Um, and I raised my hand, and um, and in that moment, I just felt like I was broken, and I just knew I just couldn't. Um, Something basically inside of me just released that shame, because when he asked that question, I've had plenty of pastors ask me that question before, and over the last few weeks, I've just been running and running and running and running, and so many things have happened in my life, and when he asked the question, I just couldn't hold it. I just couldn't hold it anymore, and that was when I raised my hand, and then I texted him if I could meet up with him, and um, I don't know if I'm getting too deep. Basically, we spoke a few days later, and I just confessed it all. I just told him everything I've ever done, um, these sins that I'm living with, and I've never really told anybody any of these things. Um, and that freedom that I felt, and I feel like God is just telling me, um, this is more important than that manga that I'm reading. And I still want to read manga. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say, oh, I don't want to read manga anymore. Like, oh, God is telling me I need to quit reading manga altogether. But I also feel like maybe I'm supposed to share this, and just tell you, like, you know, God doesn't, God isn't running away from you. You're running away from God. And I think I was literally running. I was walking in the opposite direction of God. And you know what it was? It was literally because I had this one thing in my life, this one sin that I couldn't confess. And it's not that confessing is what saves me, it's my faith and my relationship with Jesus. But that unconfessional, because I knew that God knew my heart, I knew that God knew all these things, but I couldn't admit it, and I was holding on to it. And so my prayer, I couldn't pray to God. I could never pray to God. I had a hard time praying. And I think outwardly I was very good at praying to, in church and around people. Um, and I had this moment, and not to mention just praying, but also reading my Bible. I had such a hard time reading my Bible, and I'm still working through that. I feel like this is a little preemptive of me to just make this video and just post this right away. But um, I just realized, like, this one thing has been blocking my relationship with Jesus, and it's been holding me, just keeping me locked. Like, you know, Jesus has been there, but it's like a mist that's been just keeping me trapped in this sinful life and keeping me trapped in unforgiveness because I held on to this sin, and it was a shame. It wasn't just like, I don't know how else to describe it. It was this weighty shame. And, you know, I think God was telling me, like, hey, you know, it's when you confess it in your heart. I don't know how to explain this because I don't necessarily think that you should need to confess out loud. Like, confessing in your heart is what does it. But I was so afraid of what others thought of me. And I was putting on this show, I realized. And my pastor, we prayed, and I received the Holy Spirit because I think in that moment, however I used to be, like, and I thought about this and I was like, well, because he asked me if I wanted to be baptized. And I said, I'm not really sure about that. I was scared for a second because I think part of me was sitting there thinking to myself, and I thought about this retrospectively, and I think my initial, like, fear was that people were going to judge me and say, this guy has been living as this fake life for all these years, and or I didn't want to invalidate that feeling I had when I was a kid, when I did confess and I allowed Jesus to enter my heart, because I truly believe when I was a child, like when I was 7 years old, I think Jesus did enter my heart, but somewhere along the way, I was missing the mark, I think, and um, and honestly, I think my fear of saying, "Oh, I don't know if I want to get baptized," that was that was a pride within me that was saying, um, I was basically saying, I don't want people to think that I was fake back then. Um, and that was me admitting that I was fake. And then I realized, no, because my pastor put it a good way. He said, baptism is a sign of a heart change within us. And I said, I truly think 3 weeks ago, when I met with my pastor and we prayed, I just could feel the Holy Spirit. And I feel like the Holy Spirit just told me, you don't need to run anymore. And needless to say, the sin that I was struggling with, as of now, for right now, it's gone. I'm not struggling with it anymore. I don't feel tempted by it anymore. Um, and I just feel like the weight of this shame and this sin is just completely gone. And so I wanted to share that with you, um, and just let you know, like, God can change your heart. Um, I think even if God doesn't change it immediately, because I will tell you, I prayed countless times, like, God, please take away this sin that I have, like this thing that I keep committing upon myself, um, and this thing that I keep doing, and I just could never get rid of it. But I realized in retrospect that I wasn't doing what God wanted me to do, because when I was saying in my heart, God, please take away this sin, it was never about the relationship with Him. It was always about how I was perceived by others. I wanted God to take away that sin so I could just go on pretending like I was this perfect person who never sinned, who had it all put together, and pretend like I never had any problems with Jesus. And in reality, God was saying, no, I don't want that for you. I want you to admit to everybody, because His testimony is more powerful than that. Because God doesn't use us when we're this perfect person. The truth is, none of us are perfect. God uses us when we're broken. And, and I thought, and by the way, for anybody who's thinking, "Oh, God can't use me," like if I'm living in this sinful thing, like I don't think that's true either. Like God was using me to do things while I was in this living in this sinful life. Um, but at the same time, what more could He do when I sacrifice myself and I just kill this sin that I'm living with? Um, this is going on quite a lot longer than I was hoping it would be. Um, you know, but yeah, hopefully this can reach somebody out there. Needless to say, uh, we'll see how things go. I don't really know what else to say. I might make some other videos about other things. We'll just see what happens, honestly. But yeah, it's been a few months since I posted anything on my YouTube channel. I kind of want to keep my YouTube channel still everything on there, because I like some of the stuff that I made back in 8 months ago. So excuse me, edit that out. Ooh. Uh, anyways, um, yeah, that's all I have for you. Thanks, guys. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.